Beneath the flapping canvas of a gutted billboard, Ava adjusted the living mask latched across her mouth and nose. The creature sensed her fingers and trembled, the slim ridges behind its spiraling gills fluttering as if it were tasting her uncertainty. A cool stream of filtered air entered her lungs, thin but enough. She allowed the fear to settle, let her pulse pick up, and the mask relaxed against her cheeks like a satisfied pet. Across the rubble-strewn plaza, 5 other survivors performed the same unconscious ritual. They had learned to treat dread like currency. Feel just enough and breathe. Feel too little, and the mask sealed tight, punishing serenity by cutting off the next breath. Too much, and the mask's tendrils pulsed greedily, chewing through cortisol at a rate that left its host trembling, disoriented, and dangerously close to panic blackout. They lived on the knife's edge between calm and terror. Each inhale dictated by a creature that had been marketed, before the collapse, as humanity's salvation. Ava studied her crew. Mason stood nearest, chainmail vest glinting beneath a ragged biker jacket. His mask resembled a black orchid, petals slick with bioluminescent veins. Beside him, Nadia kicked at shards of glass, face hidden behind a translucent blue organism that looked almost elegant. Jared, lanky and soft-spoken, carried their mapping slate and kept gnawing his thumbnail, an act that generated enough self-directed agitation to satisfy his mask, a pale green thing that pulsed like sea kelp. At the rear, twins Haroon and Hessa watched the skeletal skyline, silent and watchful. The plan was simple enough. Cross Old District 12, reach the aqueduct conduit before night, and camp beneath the reinforced culvert. District 12, however, was Megrim territory, and the towering predator drones preferred dusk hunts. The masks would keep them alive if the Megrim's toxin mist spilled too close, but only if their wearers produced enough fear to feed the symbiote's metabolic rush. A paradox. To remain brave, they needed to feel fear, but if they let fear rule them, they'd blunder, alerting Megrims, tripping alarms, firing weapons too early. Ava raised 2 fingers. Move. They padded across the plaza, weaving around rusted husks of hover cars and cabbage leaf piles of oxidized aluminum. Wind chattered through broken windows, making the boarded storefronts creak like ships at sea. Each sound flicked embers of unease inside Ava, stoking the biochemical fireplace her mask demanded. She'd spent weeks practicing controlled terror. Recall the day the sky first cracked open and the 40-hour night spilled from orbit. Loop the memory of her mother clawing at a stuck screen as ashfall poured through vents. Let the sensations rise, then shear away before they could paralyze. She imagined releasing just enough of the memory, like drawing a measured dose of poison. Midway down the avenue, Jared halted. "Road nests," he whispered, pointing toward a cluster of resin globes adhered to a toppled streetlight. The translucent sacks quivered, their occupants squirming in nutrient pool. Newly hatched Megrim spawn, not airborne yet, but hours from it. Nadia's mask twitched, sensing elevated cortisol. The gills rippled open, humming. She closed her eyes and exhaled. "We can't risk gunfire," she mouthed. "Blades only." Haroon produced a folding kukri, Hessa a barbed pike. Mason checked the weighted chain looped around his waist. Ava drew her machete, its edge honed with salvage glass dust. They advanced, timing every step to the rasp of wind, aiming to cut the sacks before the spawn pumped enough hemolymph to defend themselves. Ava cleaved the first globe. Warm fluid splashed across her jacket, and an eel-thin creature wriggled, shrieking at a frequency too high for unaltered ears, but perfect for their mask's membranous amplifiers. The sound set off an avalanche of fear inside Ava, but she had drilled for this. She pinned the feeling between mental brackets, allowed it to spike just enough. Her mask gulped the chemical surge and exhaled oxygenated reciprocation. She felt sharper, vision brightening in a momentary chem high. Slash, 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 globes ruptured. Mason's chain whistled, shattering resin. Jared severed the final sack, then froze as a liquid voice drifted from the building curtain wall above them. Little harvesters. Ava's skin crawled. Not a megrim frequency. This was human speech, lazy and amused. She craned upward. A figure reclined against a fourth-story balcony, silhouette modeled by Rustvine. His mask glittered copper and crimson, shaped like a lionfish, spines fanning outward magnificently. The stranger applauded slowly. Didn't expect company. Most steer clear after the last sweep. He hopped onto a leaning awning and dropped cat-like to the pavement. Mason advanced, chain poised. Identify. Call me Lux, the newcomer said, voice smooth. And relax. I'm between hunts. Haroun stepped forward. Between hunts for whom? Whoever feeds my pride. Lux gestured to his mask. And she's ravenous. The lionfish creature flexed. Its wearer radiated calm. Not the brittle equilibrium Ava's crew shared, but a polished composure. That meant something dangerous. He'd mastered other ways to stimulate his mask, or he had modified it. Rumors spoke of siphoners who farmed terror from captives, using it to power their masks without risking their own sanity. Ava set her shoulders. We cut the nests so they won't hatch. Nothing you need to quarrel over. Lux's laugh trickled like spilled pearls. Oh, but you've deleted my stock. That was tomorrow's tribute. Fresh fear for an old friend. Bad etiquette. He flicked his wrist. Thin cables unwound from gauntlets. Grapnel fibers tipped with toxins designed for mask tissue. Immobilizers. The crew tightened formation. Ava tapped her earpiece. Scatter on mark, she murmured, praying Lux hadn't tuned to their frequency. Nadia whispered, He's alone. No, Jared said, scanning rooftops. He's bait. The moment froze, brittle as sugar glass. Then, daylight dimmed in Ava's peripheral vision. Mass blotting sun. 2 megrims vaulted over the department store sign, exoskeletal wings snapping like metallic origami. Their stingers drizzled emerald vapor that hissed upon debris, carving frosty pits. Ava's mask vibrated eager. Behind her, crew masks sang in harmonic resonance, gusting micro-bursts of filtered oxygen. Fear spiked, perfect sustenance. A gift for my patrons, Lux said mildly, stepping backward. Lionfish mask opening its spines like an exotic umbrella. Megrims descended. Ava flung a smoke capsule, iodine orange, masking thermal signatures. Run! They sprinted. The first megrim pierced the cloud, sensory fronds tasting for carbonized pheromones. Mason lashed his chain, scoring a ring of sparks against its armor. The creature shrieked ultrasonically, fracturing abandoned windshield glass. The second megrim landed behind Jared, foreleg blades scissoring downward. Jared rolled aside, shaky, but his mask clamped partially. He wasn't producing enough fear, too focused on calculating angles. Ava shouted, Think of your brother! Jared's brother had died during the collapse. The memory slammed him. Tears instant. His hormone levels blazed, mask flaring open. Air whooshed and he dodged, barely, as the Megrim's blade gouged tarmac. Ava launched herself onto the first Megrim's thorax, plunging machete between plating segments. Viscous ichor fountained. The creature bucked, her mask squealed with delight, and oxygen surged. Too much fear now. She inhaled, slowed her heart, pictured the salt flats at dawn. The mask sensed the calm and began to seal. She reopened the floodgate. Image of her mother, coughing as the ceiling caved. Gills reopened. Controlled terror. A gymnast's landing. Lux observed from a storefront awning, motionless. The Megrims weren't attacking him. His mask's spines emitted low-frequency clicks, command tones, puppet master. "Break signal!" Nadia shouted, yanking a sonic shiv from her belt. She stabbed it into a lamppost, triggering dissonant pulses. The Megrims hesitated, arrhythmic. Lux frowned. Harun and Hessa, in synchronized grace, vaulted barrels and drove twin spears into the second Megrim's optic cluster. The monster spasmed, wings shredding tarpaulin banners. Jared, fueled by white-hot grief, sprinted beneath and jammed a flare into its thoracic vents. Magnesium ignited. The Megrim howled, lurched sideways, and collapsed in a riot of melted chitin. Ava's Megrim bucked again, launching her against a drainpipe. She felt ribs creak, mask suctioned tightly, misreading the pain for dwindling fear, choking airflow. She forced herself to replay the moment she first held her little sister's body, heavy with dust and silence. Terror gushed. Air returned. She sprang up, seized Mason's chain, and together they garroted the Megrim's neck. When the vertebra cracked, she yanked free, panting, mask purring. Lux clapped slowly. "Impressive, but you've bruised my ego and my merchandise." Mason swung the chain. "Back away or we bleed you." "Not advisable." Lux flicked his gauntlet. Micro-darts hissed, embedding in street rubble. A grid of crackling blue light erupted. A kinetic fence. They were boxed against the skeletal husk of a mag-rail carriage. He stepped through an aperture that closed behind him. The fence shimmered, caging Ava's crew amid Megrim corpses and scorched street. "For what it's worth," Lux said. "I admire your spirit. Makes this next part efficient." He pressed a palm device. Their masks quivered violently, receptors bombarded by an ultrasonic frequency. A crushing dread poured into Ava's mind, artificial, an injected phobia sequence. Her legs buckled. The mask drank greedily, overjoyed by the buffet, but overconsumption siphoned its oxygen output to metabolic digestion. She gasped, lungs tasting vacuum. Around her, the twins collapsed. Jared clawed his mask, veins bulging. Nadia bit her arm to redirect adrenaline, but she too sagged. Ava's vision narrowed. She sensed her mask's stippled belly filling, glutted and idle, no longer converting enough air. They would suffocate on their own induced terror. Lux watched, eyes luminous behind the lionfish. "Sleep now. When you wake, you'll be in my hold. Your fear will keep my pride fed for weeks." Ava fought for clarity. She forced her focus onto Lux's form, shining under flickering billboard light. She realized his mask's spines oscillated, producing the ultrasonic fear tone. The device in his hand merely amplified it. If she could disrupt that resonance... She slid one hand to her belt. Her last smoke capsule, but loaded with powdered ferroglass, magnetic shards designed to gum drone servos. If they reached the oscillating spines, might interfere with acoustic generation. Her mask pinched. She saw stars, but some air remained. She pictured the day her sister had smiled at the ocean for the first time. Calm. The mask constricted further. She spiked the memory with the horror of losing that moment forever. Oxygen dribbled in, just enough. She crushed the capsule, whispered into calm. "On 3. They might not hear, drowned by internal terror, but she had to try. 1. She rose shakily. Lux tilted his head, curious. 2? She hurled the capsule not at the mask, but at the billboard's tattered metal scaffold above Lux. 3. The bomb erupted in a glittering cyclone of ferroglass dust and smoke. Magnetized shards clung to metal surfaces, and, crucially, to the copper spines of Lux's mask. The oscillation faltered, producing a warbling screech rather than the precise fear chord. Sudden silence, like a plug pulled from a reservoir. The artificial dread evaporated. The real, measured fear remained. But now, it was under their control again. Oxygen flowed back as symbiotes resumed balanced metabolism. Lux staggered, swiping his mask. Clever girl. Ava charged before he could recover. She vaulted Megrim carcass, machete raised. Lux caught her blade between gauntlet ridges, twisting. They grappled, masks pressed near enough for Ava to see miniature cilia inside his mouthpiece, lapping geometry. He tried to whisper another acoustic command, but the spines were crusted. Nada. Ava drove her knee into his sternum. Lux stumbled into the kinetic fence. It buzzed, singeing his coat. Mason hurled his chain, latching Lux's ankle, and yanked. Lux crashed onto chitin shards. Kill him, Nadia said, voice hoarse. Lux looked up, blood in his teeth. Without me, the signal grid stays. You'll burn through tanks before dawn. Ava glanced at Jared. He hacked into the device Lux had dropped, scanning. The fence is tied to his biometrics, Jared confirmed, sweat streaking his collar. If his heartbeat stops, gridlock's permanent. Lux smirked. Insurance. Hessa spat. Then we take him hostage. Haroon added. Make him march until we're safe. Lux shrugged, resigned. I get to live another day. Fine. Ava wiped her machete. You get to live until you prove useful. First task, open the fence. He keyed a sequence. The buzzing barrier dissipated. As her crew caught breath, Ava bound Lux's wrists with salvage cable and relieved him of gauntlets and palm device. They moved out, triple checks for recon drones. Lux walked at point, forced to lead through alleys laced with his own booby traps. Each triggered trip line or deactivated mine chipped away at his arrogance. His mask remained sluggish, still gummed by ferroglass dust. He had to rely on natural fear now, and Ava saw how poorly he balanced the equation. Sweat beaded. Spines twitched half-closed. Predators rarely practiced prey's discipline. They reached the aqueduct conduit by dusk. Wind roared through cracked pipes, carrying the smell of rust and algae. The culvert mouth opened like a giant's jaw. Inside, decades-old scaffolds formed ribcage architecture, with pockets dry enough for camp. While Mason and the twins secured perimeter charges, Nadia unpacked ration packs. Jared began scrubbing Lux's lionfish mask with solvent pads but avoided removing it. A man denied his symbiote too long could suffer neural backlash. Compassion, Ava thought, even now. She knelt opposite Lux. How many more puppeteers like you? She asked. Lux flexed bound hands. Few. Takes skill and cruelty. Most folk rely on organic terror like you. Why collaborate with Megrims? They're simple once you learn the diction. He tapped the spines. Everything fears something. Find that frequency and you hold the leash. Ava considered. Tomorrow you'll teach us the basics. Enough to distort their swarm calls so they hunt elsewhere. Lux's laugh was bitter. You think I'll arm you against me? You already have, she said, glancing at the solvent pad Jared wielded. The ferroglass dust left pits. Your mask's oscillator plates are ruined. You can't broadcast those tones again, but you can translate them. She leaned closer. Help us reach the mountain shelters. Word is they're developing second-gen masks, ones that feed on courage instead of fear. Lux's eyes flickered. Courage metabolite is rare. Synthetic. They found a way? Ava lied smoothly, though she hoped. Either you join that future, or wander alone until your mask starves. He hesitated, pride dueling calculation. Finally, he nodded once. Acknowledgement, not surrender. They set watches. Ava took first. She perched atop a girder, overlooking moonlit canal, humming snatches of the lullaby her mother once sang. The memory cut and soothed simultaneously, drip-feeding chemical fear steady enough to keep her mask purring, but allowing her mind clarity. Halfway through her watch, she sensed movement. Jared approached, settling beside her. "Your pulse is spiking," he said quietly, eyes on the void behind her mask's lenses. "Memories," she replied. "You ever let them rest?" "If I do, I suffocate." He nodded. "I've been calibrating the mapping slate. We're 2 days from Carmine Pass. After that, maybe the shelters are real." "What worries you?" He hesitated. "What if we find safety and the masks still demand fear? What if the scientists haven't solved it?" Ava thought of a future where children grew up having to recall horror to earn breath, where peace itself was a hazard. She chose not to accept it. "Then we'll learn to farm fear differently," she said. "Not from torture, not from memory wounds, maybe from stories, simulations, controlled illusions. Fear doesn't have to hurt us to feed them." Jared laughed softly, turning bedtime tales into breathing apparatus. "Sounds like magic." "Or engineering," Ava answered. "Either way, we'll live." A distant metallic shriek drifted along the aqueduct, Magrim patrol scanning the deserted expanse. Ava and Jared froze, allowing primal fear to bloom. Their masks sighed in delight, alveoli unfurling. Oxygen surged. The patrol passed, silhouettes tumbling across broken moonlight, oblivious. Ava released the fear in increments, steadying. The night smelled of wet stone and something almost sweet, maybe algae blossoms. She closed her eyes and, for the first time since the collapse, permitted herself 3 heartbeats of genuine tranquility. On the 3rd beat, her mask tightened warningly. She opened her eyes, smiled wryly, invited a sliver of fear back in, and breathed